to the Overdoing It podcast, where we help you stop overthinking it and start overdoing it by sharing stories of people who got out of their head and into action. Today, I am joined by the incredible Alex Wolf. She's an artist and marketer with a really extensive resume that includes being named one of Fast Company's top 100 most creative people in business and being named to Black Enterprise's top 40 under 40 in tech and STEM. She has many more accolades, including starting and selling an internet company by the time she was 25. And I would describe her as one of the smartest people I follow. So, Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you. What a nice introduction.
Well, I do my best. I do my best. I have really enjoyed your content across multiple media. So I followed your podcast, the short film that you did, just Twitter threads, all
How
that.
did you find me? How did you find me?
That is a really good question. I think, you know what? The first thing that I saw of you may have been the Janelle Monae interview.
Okay.
And I think from there I just kind of went really deep down a rabbit hole. And I was like, this is so smart. Because at that time I was like really interested in corporate consulting and I was working kind of like entrepreneurship adjacent in a college
Mhm.
setting, helping student entrepreneurs. So I was really around the startup scene in Dallas. And I loved that you were consulting with startups, talking about marketing. And so I
Mhm.
was just soaking a lot of that up, trying to figure out where do I fit.
Okay. I like to hear that. Okay, good to know. Sorry, keep going.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good. So I noticed that kind of recently, not too recent, but pretty recent, you took like a social media hiatus.
Mhm.
We're not
Mhm.
around for a little bit, and that was noticeable to me as a follower of your content. And so when I kind of saw you take that break, you were talking real tech philosophy. It was like very business, marketing, media. And then you came back and were like, no, guys, I'm an artist. And like, that's what we're going to talk about now. So I think, right, like, I feel like rebranding is one of the biggest things that you can overthink if you even want to use the term like rebrand, right? 'Cause
Mhm.
we're people, not brands. So it's kind of hard to say, like, oh, let me package myself in this box and give it to you. But I
Yeah.
love to hear about this current era that you're in and like the mindset that got you here.
Yes. So I have been on the internet since I was 2 years old. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but keyword little bit. So my dad is in tech and we had a very tech-filled house and I was using computers and social media since they were formed. Why does that matter? Because by the time I had turned 30 and had made a name for myself, made an internet business and pretty much made a whole career of myself on the internet. I had never once in my life got offline and tried to figure out my identity offline. I'm also mixed race, which is commonly known to come with identity issues because you come from multi cultures. You don't even have to be biracial. You could just be multicultural. You can grow up in two different cultures or three different cultures or four. And so I really just was like having a bit of a crisis and I was like, you know what? I don't think Instagram and crisis mix.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna get off. And also to be transparent as well, and I made a video about this, I had put so much effort in trying to talk to tech companies about the ethics and designs of their products. They were so behind on creators. I have very distinct memories of going into huge companies that we spend time on every day, on apps we spend time on every day, and giving presentations like, this is what a content creator is. This is why it's different than an influencer. This is how you can give us value. And they were like, huh? Like, no exaggeration. They were like, what? Like, they had very little grasp on the economies that were sprouting and available on their platforms, specifically brown and black influencers and people driving culture. And I was burnt out. Between that and the identity stuff, I was just like, why am I here? Like, I hate this app. No one listens to me besides my amazing supporters. And I'm like, I'm just gonna have to give myself a break. And the break was only so juicy because I made it indefinite. Like, I wasn't sure I was ever coming back. I was like, I need to at least feel like I might never come back again.
Mhm.
And giving myself that much freedom really helped me explore new sides of myself. Another funny story I tell everyone is that I was jaded from I'm a millennial. Are you a millennial?
I am also a millennial.
Okay, so this is a safe space. So when Instagram turned into TikTok essentially and focused on reels, there was all this emphasis on the dancing, and I felt offended. Like now I'm supposed to dance to just, I see doctors and lawyers dancing, and I'm like, what is going on with the world? So I get off social media and I go explore some hobbies and, what do I like? And one of the things I end up signing for is a pole dancing class and I fall in love. And so now there's this delicious irony that I'm dancing like crazy now.
You too are
So
dancing on the internet.
I didn't think I would ever see the day. So I'm dancing on the internet. And I'm very happy for that. And I feel very blessed by God for that because um, I just I can see how it helps me get more of my message out there because let's face it, dancing performs well on social media. That's why so many of us do it. So if I can still keep my mission and message intact and infuse these new hobbies and parts of myself that are artistic, then it's a win-win, you know?
I definitely identify with that. One of the things I have kind of two routes I want to go here. One is identity, but I'll come back to that. The other is like the discipline to stay off social media. Because I think
Mhm.
sometimes we don't realize like we're in an addictive state, you know?
Mhm.
I started
Yeah.
setting screen time limits on my phone, and then I find myself being like, ignore for 15 minutes. Like,
Yeah, girl, I don't even bother with those. Yep, I hear you.
so,
Mhm.
well, talk to me about the discipline of just staying off, or were you just so kind of like jaded and dissuaded with it at that point that it was like, no, I don't even want to be here anymore?
Okay, well, let's put in a caveat. I might have not been posting, but I was on social media. Like I'm on TikTok scrolling my life away. Um, and I also, it's interesting you bring this up, and I'm happy you did because it's helping me realize that as I moved. So that's another big thing. I moved to a whole different state. I was like, I was done with Alex Wolf. I was like, this is not how I want to be introduced. It's so funny. I worked so hard in my 20s to live up to that quote that says like work so hard that you don't have to introduce yourself.
Mhm.
And now that I had gotten to that place in New York, I was like, I don't want everyone to know me as this rock star entrepreneur because it comes with so much weight
Mhm.
and it's corrupting the types of like genuine connections I want to make. Like, I just want to be a regular girl. Like, that's all I want to be. So when I came to South Florida, Miami area, and I started taking these classes, one of the pole teachers suggested we make Finstas to kind of show our progress. And so I made a Finsta and was connecting with the other girls in the studio. And it's almost like it was a different app. It was so supportive and inspiring to be on Instagram within this context of just setting up a little Finsta account and only following girls I know in the studio or other dancers that are inspiring to me. And that really helped. What was happening was I could feel as I was meeting more people that I was like too much of in a split. And I was like, how do I think I'm starting to want to integrate these things finally. And that was scary because obviously coming out as a pole dancer is a big deal, especially if you're a professional. I don't care what it doesn't even matter what profession you are,
Yeah.
it's gonna come with some looks, it's gonna come with some like, okay. So I had to like muster up and be like, am I sure I want to do this? Like, is no one gonna ever hire me again? But I had to come face with the mirror and be like, who are you? And
Mhm.
like, whoever you are, please show up as her. Because if you keep hiding her, you're going to not find the people you want to meet. And that's basically what happened. The Finsta was great, but it started to feel too enclosed. So I
Mhm.
went from like feeling too exposed to feeling too enclosed. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to come back to social media. But instead of burdening myself, which I think we do this a lot, we say, what are they expecting of me? They're not gonna like this, or "Oh, how do I please them?" I didn't ask those questions anymore. What I said is, what do I want to get out of social media? What
Mm.
do I want to get? And the answer was, I want to meet people like me. And it was, again, one of those like full circle God moments, in my opinion, because God was like, look, you happen to have a huge Instagram that you can reach a lot of people and find the exact kind of people you want,
Right.
And I was like, wow. So that is that experience of, um, I say all that to say I wasn't off social media. I was
Okay.
still on, and it helped me, you know, get here.
I love it. I have found that connecting with people in person like does something for my brain chemistry. Recently, like we stated, I am a millennial. I turned 30 this year. So that was like a little
Oh,
my
you're a baby millennial. You're
I
not
guess you
like
could
a
say.
yes,
I guess you could say. I when I
which
turned
is fine.
a lot of last year, I had
That's
twins.
big. Wow.
Yeah, so I'm like not even just a mom, two people's mama.
Wow.
So a lot
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And I
Mhm.
started doing my creative work full time and like being a kind of sort of stay at home mom. And so I just found that like it's like me, my computer, my phone and two babies. And so I have found that like whenever I get to do something in person, go out, like be with people, I'm like, "Oh, I'm not disillusioned about the world. Like things are
Yeah,
good and we can all be happy and connected." And there's something about like genuine human connection that's so important outside of being like, this is my representative and who I'm trying to I was stuck in that for a really long time. And I think I spent a lot of time equating what I do with who I am and
right.
trying to dispel that. I remember my husband telling me one time I was feeling really disillusioned about my job. And he was like, girl, your job and your purpose ain't the same thing.
Right.
So I think like what would you say to people who are feeling kind of like I'm not having this purpose driven experience, but maybe that's not going to come from what you do for work?
I've gone back and forth on this. I remember, okay, I started the Boss Babe movement. So I feel like
Mhm.
I'm primarily responsible for so many women, which I'm grateful for. But like, I feel like I was one of the first chairmans of like the millennial that was like, we're going to do our passion for profit, or we're going to, that like, we're going to marry those two things, because I think that's something our generation does value, is like, we grew up seeing a lot of our parents kind of do drudge work, and we were like, how do we not do that? How do I somehow enjoy the work that I'm doing? Then I went through a period of time where I was like, infusing my creative passions with my economic stability was the worst decision I could have ever made. Like, these two things must stay separate. The creative side must stay pure. The money side, make it as boring as possible. Like, make it as, I don't care if I'm looking at spreadsheets all day. Like, keep these things separate. And now I feel like I'm maybe somewhere in the middle. Like, I feel like I ended up pursuing a lot of things that were purposefully boring and more focused on like the finances and stuff like that. And I think I think I was like squeezing or draining my spirit more than I think was healthy. You
Mm,
know what I'm saying? So I think there is a balance. Now, that being said, do still think there is something to not burdening too much of your creative and artistic side with, like, it must make money, especially in the beginning. Like, just let it rock. The joy it gives you should really surpass the money. Like, if it's really something you love, that joy will make you really not care about money for like 5 minutes. And that's part of why we do it, right? I need something in my life that connects me to myself so much that everything else is okay, no matter how not okay everything else is. But I also think the only like nuances with that is, I do think we all have gifts, God-given gifts, and
mhm.
that, they are designed in a way that do supply provision. I don't know how on top of each other they are. Maybe it's you're good at this thing, and maybe the provision isn't completely financial. Maybe it's providing other things. That's where I am today. We'll talk next year and see where it goes.
Yeah. It definitely
Yeah.
changes a lot. I want to circle back to the identity piece because I feel like back in 2020, like early pandemic, right? I was really in that identity struggle. And this is where I went through, I have like a life transformation every 3 to 4 years. So
Okay.
this was one of them.
Mhm,
And I was sitting around like, I just feel aimless. And on paper, you could say I had done good things. And like, my parents were proud of me, I think. I'd be take a lot for them not to be. But I just didn't feel like I was waking up every day with like something to be excited about. And that was
mhm,
doing something to my spirit. And
mhm,
so I ended up getting the idea for my company that I have now, Black Woman on a Mission, but I wasn't calling it a company. I was like, this is a project that I am doing
mhm.
that has absolutely no pressure on it. And if nobody
Right,
rocks with it, I literally don't care. Like, it's for
right.
me. I resonate with it. I rock with it. And that's what I'm doing. And so I just put out like a little limited collection of these kind of shirts and items that I'd seen like literally in a dream. I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, okay, let's
Mhm,
get it
mhm.
all out right now while like, it's all flowing. Don't stop the momentum. And
Right.
I put it out and it took off over time. And now I'm able to do it full time, which I'm super, super grateful for.
Amazing, yeah.
I think it would not have happened if I'd started with this like pressure. I'm starting a business. These are all the business things I'm going to do about it.
Right, right.
Because I've done that before with different things, and maybe I didn't have
Mhm.
all the tools, resources, mindsets to make them happen. But for whatever reason,
Yeah.
it's a God thing, that I got to do this now. And I think Black Woman on a Mission, like that moniker, kind of gave me a sense of identity, right? I was like, well, that is
Mhm.
something that I can identify with is like trying to be a purposeful person, trying to be on a mission, trying to do these things. And so even now, when I
Yeah.
think about the company Black Woman on a Mission and like the things I need to do to handle customer service and order fulfillment and all those things, I'm like, that's not my identity. But being a Black woman on a mission, like that's something I'll be identifying with forever, in
Yeah.
multiple different ways. That's something I can teach my daughter, versus
Mhm.
being like, I'm an entrepreneur and that's my identity. In terms of the identity space, I'm always thinking about like, what is that what is that baseline? What is that thing that you go back to that helps you kind of get centered? What's your core? You know what I mean?
Mhm. Well, earlier you were talking about you said the word rebrand, and I feel like that's relevant right in this what we're saying right now because rebrands and even what you're saying about Black women on a mission and how it didn't start off as like a pure business idea, it just started off based on your values. And that's really what it comes down to is like your values need to be lived out in your own life and also in your business. I think that when you don't know what your values are because you're too busy distracting yourself or you're too busy picking values that sound good that you kind of wish are yours, it's not going to hit. It's just not going to hit all the way. You have to go in there and be like, what are my values? And you might get surprised. You might be like, oh, I didn't know, being fierce was a value. Like that's one of my values.
I love it.
So, yeah, and the other thing too is the reality is we change and our values change. The values I had in my early 20s are not the same values that I have now. So, when we're thinking about rebranding, it's just important that rebranding is just your values shifting and changing and going from one era to the next. So that's the answer is it's my values. I'm constantly checking in, and I think especially if you are a person who has struggled with identity problems, if you've struggled with CPTSD, which is something I was just talking about on my social media platform, any type of codependency, like if you grew up in an environment where being open and honest about your feelings was not allowed and you kind of had to learn to kind of just shut up,
Mhm.
you're going to have a harder time a, being able to identify your values, B, being able to stick to them, and C, being able to be sensitive to when they change.
Mhm.
And D, like honoring them, like really honoring them and saying, like I said, if this is really a value, I need to really live that. Like if I'm really a pole dancer, I really need to live that and like not be ashamed about that and be excited about aligning with people who actually get that. So I would say, yeah, that is my core is like checking in with my values and being sensitive to them and being compassionate about them changing and being an evolving person.
Isn't that such a big thing, right? Not feeling shame about who you actually are.
Yeah.
I've looked at, I've spent a lot of time on social media, more time than is probably healthy. And
Mhm.
so there's all these creatives, all these different people that I'm like, man, if I was like this, if I was like that, if I was like this, if I was like that.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, but they're already them. And that's what
Right.
the thing that you're attracted to is them doing them. So you have to be attracted to you doing you.
Exactly.
And so that's what I try to always stay reminded of. A big thing that you mentioned was eras, and so that's like one of the big things I wanted to talk with you about is like you've had a lot of different eras, and I'm sure the
Mhm.
mindset, the Alex that we got in those eras is totally different than the Alex that we see now. Because I look at what
Right.
you're doing now versus like Boss Babe, and I think to myself like, okay, what is the mindset of 21-year-old Alex as she's like
Oh god.
paint graphics and is like, "Hustle, babe, let's do it."
I have so much compassion for that young girl because she was a girl just trying to get it from the mud, get it out from the mud. That's one thing that I had to learn as I navigated up corporate spaces, rooms with high net worth celebrity is that I didn't take this traditional route. It was literally a girl with internet and a dream. And so that version and that era was just like it was a girl in survival mode. And I really think that audience was on the same frequency as me. I really think we were all like, we gotta figure this out. We gotta make this happen. I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know how I'm gonna get out of this, but that was the mindset that I was in because you have to remember I'm 22, 23. I had very little support in like career development. Like I was always expected to go to college, but I didn't have as much support as I would have liked to actually like sit down and apply and get funding. Like all of that was kind of like you're on your own, like figure it out. And it was just really hard to I think that's just a really hard time in everyone's life, especially if you don't have the support and you don't have this like step by step guide of like what am I going to do?
Right.
And the only thing I was good at, and it's so crazy to think about now because at the time it didn't really mean much. Like the only thing I was good at was social media. And I remember just people being like, what are you going to do with that? Or like, you really think companies are going to pay you? Because that's how much companies weren't using social media yet. It was still like just what kids were doing. It wasn't seen as like as an intense marketing channel.
Right.
So that's what was on her mind. She just wanted to succeed, be able to pay her bills and be independent and, be the girl that she was writing about in all the quotes and, the way I was bringing women together.
I love that. And having grace for our younger selves, because I feel like my younger self very much so was that like millennial. My mom worked 3 jobs. My dad worked till 9 o'clock at night every night. And I was like, guys, this does not look fun. Like y'all are not, this is not a good ad
Right.
career. I'm not into it at all. And like me being on the smarter side of children, my parents were like, we got one. This one, she's gonna be our lawyer. She's gonna do great. It's gonna be awesome. And I
Yeah.
was like, "Ooh, yeah, like y'all probably
You're
not."
like, I don't
You know,
know. Yeah.
I was like in high school telling people like, "No, I'm planning on marrying rich. Like, we're probably just gonna travel and like I'll have some kids, but we'll have nannies. It'll be fine." Like,
Right, right.
and I'm like, and my parents were like, where are you getting that from? Because nothing we're doing should
We
be
didn't raise you like
yeah,
that. Right,
yeah.
right, right.
You
Mhm.
know? And what's hilarious is I'm like, I still ended up kind of living some version of that life. Like it's not super far off, but if
Mhm,
you think
mhm.
that was my value, that was the affirmation I was bringing to my life, which was like, I don't want to do nothing, but I don't want to do something I hate every day and all day. And one of the things that you mentioned as you were talking was rising to this kind of status and then being in rooms with people who've taken a different path. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes when you get into those rooms, other people can have the thought process of like, who are you and how'd you get here? And then sometimes it makes
Girl.
you question, like, who am I and how did I get here? So,
Girl.
know if there was like some imposter syndrome. I have a whole theory about imposter syndrome that I will get to, but I want
Okay.
to hear, but I want to hear what that was like.
Girl, I am the Cardi B of the tech world. Like, let's put it that way. Like, I come into the meeting. I have one of my favorite stories is I got a meeting with a tech company, big tech company, and I had a juicy couture. All my business stories are about like what I was wearing. So I have this juicy couture dress, cute as hell, like a little sporty dress. I think I wore pigtails, big fluffy pigtails, probably some Air Forces, and not last but not least my grills,
Okay.
bottom grills. And I say that story because I wasn't trying to make a statement. It wasn't like I was going in there like, I'm gonna show them I don't give a shit about their, corporate. That's how much I didn't realize what I was about to walk into. I'm just thinking, I'm not thinking. That's how like pure and myself I was. And sometimes it takes those instances where you're like, you go into an environment and you realize no one looks like you. Everyone's kind of like, what? And not only that, like I went in there, this is how you know I'm from Brooklyn. I went in there and I was like, I need to speak to the CEO. And they're like, what? They're like, who is this girl? And I'm like, I've been reading all the magazines, I've been reading all the articles, like I know exactly what's going on. I need to talk to him. And they were all just like, and I have so little experience with like the magnitude of bureaucracy in a huge tech corp. I have no idea how many emails and calls need to be made. And I'm just like going in there with all this audacity, which I do think ended up working out for me. But I think it wasn't so much that I struggled with imposter syndrome. It was just that I had to realize how much I was not, one of these things are not like the other. And sometimes I look back at that and I'm like, sometimes I look back and I'm like, damn, like, I was crazy. But then I also look back and I'm like, damn, like I was crazy, and the funny part of the end of the story is I ended up emailing the CEO and he ended up calling me in and booking a time to meet with me personally. And we had a great one-to-one meeting and relationship. And it was the most wild, confirming, just, there's just nothing like being a nobody pretty much, just being a girl on the internet with ideas, going into that corporation with my girls, saying I need to talk to the CEO. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. And then the CEO being so grateful I reached out and
Yeah.
told him like what I thought was going on. That was wild.
I love that story because one, the audacity is like, that's just you, like, okay, sure. But also, too, it's like this really pure belief, like in yourself, in your ideas, in what you think. And also, like, this is not a whim. I was reading, I was studying this, and like, you don't
Girl.
get this wrong.
Right. That part. Yes.
So that's a huge part. I think one of the things, and maybe this is like my Southern upbringing, because I don't think growing up in Mississippi and growing up in Brooklyn are like two real different things,
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I think probably by the time I was like in first grade, I like understood respectability politics like to a T.
Mm,
And I
mm.
understood like this face that we needed to put on,
Yeah.
thought we needed to put on, to survive and hopefully to thrive. My
Yeah.
earliest kind of memory of that is calling my mom's job and her always like answering in her work voice. And
Mm.
and I remember being like, "Why do you always answer the phone like that?" And then
Right.
you
Like,
realize
who's
it's
this?
talk regular. And she kind of went through the whole explaining code switching to me and like, this is something that I have to do.
Mm.
Like, this is actually really important.
Right.
And
Right.
also stop calling me in my good job. So I just feel like that maybe stopped me in a lot of ways because I was
Right.
always it's like from that early stint, I was always just trying to like fit myself into a box and try to be
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't stand out too much. But if you talk to me, then like you'll get it. You'll get
Right.
why
Right.
I'm valuable and that sort of thing without kind of just saying like maybe if I just be myself, I can shortcut my way there.
Yeah.
And so now I feel like even at 30, I'm still trying to lean into that in different ways.
Yeah, and also, like you said earlier, no one is going to be the same shape as you, the same aura as you. Like when you talked about trying to find a box, like I made a video about how we try to hide from ourselves when we're looking for a box to fit in, and we're picking the box because it looks good, it sounds good, it seems like you can make it work. But then it's like the reality is we're not box shaped. We're human beings. We have an organic, unique shape. Everyone is a different shape. Everyone's a different piece of the puzzle. And you're never going to find someone who has the same puzzle piece as you. And I think that's why sometimes when we go on social media or we're trying to find the example, we can maybe find inspirations. We could find someone that says, like, that little piece, I
Mhm.
got a little bit of that in me. But ultimately, you have to go on a journey to discover your own shape and bring that to the table and trust that that shape is going to give you everything that you want and more.
Right. So much about trusting yourself, your gift, your unique value, right?
Yes, yes.
That is something I think probably is not instilled in enough people at a young age, right? There
Yeah.
it's kind of shrinking a little bit at a time that we get
Yep.
from different inputs throughout our life. And I'm constantly trying to make clear to people how much the inputs that they receive are affecting their outputs, right? I
Mhm.
recently heard you on live today talking about like it's crazy that people don't read. And I was like, no, for real. Like,
Right.
because it's like a book is like such an input that can have like a lasting effect. And there are books that I go back to like over and over because sometimes I'm like, I need to get in the frame of mind of this right here. And if
Yep,
I
yep,
just
yep, yep.
literally read it, that kind of immersion is going to get me in the right mindset. It's going to get me firing on all cylinders. I remember my grandma, and you have to understand, like my grandmother is like a black woman from Mississippi who went to college in the 1930s. Like, so she's just
Wow.
not to be played with.
Mm.
And she would be like, that's what's wrong with colored people today. Y'all don't read and they put everything in the book. Um,
She's not wrong.
and so I just that like stuck with me because this was the woman who had me on the floor like this is the Black Encyclopedia. So it's like all of these kind of inputs that we're taking in, who we're following, what we're reading, what we're
Our
watching.
media diet, yes.
Yes,
A
yes,
lot of us are eating trash in our media. Mhm.
yes. Like, and we have to be more cognizant because a lot of it I think is unknowing. It's like pick up, I scroll. I'm not thinking too hard about it.
It's
So
the exploitation of our senses. Our senses are sensitive to movement and faces and shapes and sounds and noise. That was part of when I was doing a lot of more of my tech philosophy work and I came out with attention for sale. That was my big beef. I'm like, it's like the same health epidemic we had when cigarettes came out and we didn't know how harmful the cigarettes are and everyone's just puffing, puffing, puffing. And it's like I'm like, I don't want us to wait until all the data comes in, which it is coming in, and it is showing us how, I mean, there's class action lawsuits on the mental health damage, on suicides of young girls in particular. Like, that's what my issue was, is like, we're consuming all this media and thinking it's just, it has no impact, and it has tremendous impact on our psyches, on our politics, on our economy, on everything.
absolutely, absolutely. And part of this podcast is like an opportunity to just give people better inputs. Like, can I just tell you
Hmm.
something that's helpful? Can I tell you something that's encouraging? Something that's going
Yeah,
to make you have a better day.
life, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of it, and a lot of the work that I'm trying to do. And I think, you know, a lot of it for me is like challenging because I've built a lot around being a black woman on a mission, being resilient, which is like our frame. Now stop overthinking it and start overdoing it. So it's like every time I find myself in the patterns of things that I'm constantly like preaching to people not to do, I'm like, girl, come on now. Come on now, practice
Right.
what you preach. You gotta live it out. It can't be a pressure cooker if you let it.
I think it can be a pressure cooker, but I also feel like when that kind of stuff happens, that it might be worth re-examining how to make space for that part of you in the values.
Hmm.
Because if it's too rigid and if it's like, oh, I have to be this way because I say I'm going to be this way, then maybe that's not the best description or articulation of the way you are. But that's just my 2 cents.
Real. I take that to heart. I take that to I do take that to heart. So one of the questions that I asked was around right imposter syndrome being, in which you said you didn't really feel, which I think is great because I feel like now so many people are feeling it or thinking that they're feeling it. But
Yeah.
I wrote a book in 2020. I was just I
Congrats.
was doing all the things. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I talked about in the book was imposter syndrome, which then led me down the rabbit hole of reading the actual study on imposter syndrome. And
Okay.
so even now I'm like, I need to write a part 2 of my book because I was wrong about what I said the first time. Like, sorry. Let me go.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but when you read the study on imposter syndrome, it's studied in high achieving white women and nobody else.
Wow.
And so I'm kind of like, I almost don't feel like this is applicable. And I feel like
Right. Right.
it's been a marketing ploy to be like, see, people of color, you're imposters. And I'm like, no, that's
Like
actually,
maybe that's not our thing.
I don't think that's our shtick at all. You know,
I
I really don't.
actually love that. I love that for us if that's the truth, but we got to do the studies. We got to do the studies. I also want to say too, it's not like I never experience it. I mean, I experience it, but not in situations where I probably should have, or
Real.
where another certain type of demographic might have statistically. Right. Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've been in like situations with like people that I would deem like cool. And I'm like, oh, I feel kind of out of place here. Like, I mean, I felt like imposter syndrome even in those spaces where I'm like, this feels like I kind of have that like lunchroom feeling again. Cause I didn't start going to public school until the 7th grade. And I went to a like super small, and when I say small, I mean like this is K through 12th grade, and there's 60 people that go here. We were at a small, like fundamentalist Christian Baptist school from like
Hmm.
1st to 6th grade. So my brain is washed. Okay. Like
Hmm.
the brainwashing is so deep. And honestly, probably for the best if I really look back on it. I'm like, actually, I'm like a more sane person because I like lived in this bubble for my formative years. But I went
Right.
to public school and I was like, first things first, I gotta learn how to cuss. Like everybody's cussing. I don't even know how to use the words good. Like I gotta learn how to cuss. That's first of all. Second of all, like maybe I can get smart with the teacher. Like that can like help me out a little bit. So I'm just
Earn me some points.
like,
Yeah.
I was trying to earn anything because they were like, "Why do you talk like that?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm sorry." Like so I was trying to like figure this out. And I remember my parents being like, "Why are you trying so hard to be ghetto?" And I was like, "Is it working?" Trying so hard. Like I'm trying so hard. Like these people are really cool and I want them to like me. So
Right.
even now I feel like, whatever we might say about being an imposter, but I really don't think that that's the shtick. I really don't. I think in a lot of spaces for people of color, I think they've been gaslit a lot, especially
Mhm.
kind of the corporate and like educated community, because you go into spaces where people are simply not used to seeing you there, but you've
Yeah.
gone to the same place that they are with less resources most of the time. So then it's
Right.
like, how then do I become the imposter? I did better than
Right,
you.
like, I like you said, I read the stuff, I did my research, I'm trying to help y'all. Like, I'm not just here to y'all are not doing me a favor, I'm doing y'all a favor. Yeah.
No, thanks. Yes. So I'm kind of thinking about going on a side quest to like
That seems interesting. You gotta do it.
of that. Yeah. I
You
mean,
gotta do it.
honestly, my problem is I just go too hard for stuff. I'm like, should I get a PhD? I'll write my dissertation about this, then I'll write. And I'm like, maybe no, that's not necessary, but
Well, that's the irony, right? You're doing some imposter syndrome things to talk about imposter syndrome, but you don't gotta do all that, girl. Don't do all that. We don't got time for that. We need the message needs to come out now. You do it, but still talk about it as you do it if you're gonna do that.
you're right. But I feel like that may be one thing that we have in common is like a sense of urgency around an idea.
Yeah, think about just even people listening to this now, how that's gonna help them change their posture as they're going out and about in the world. Like all of this stuff helps. It makes a difference. It's influential.
I think so. Which there's a big conversation right now that maybe just a quick weigh in. big conversation right now of like influencer versus content creator. What is Alex Wolf's take?
I haven't seen what people are saying recently, but I will say that when I was going into the companies and like I had like slides and I was what the way I explained it, which I don't know if that's what the conversation is now, but basically, I was trying to get tech companies to social media companies to see that influencers are more like your use my promo code. I'm going to promote this product. They might have never talked about the product. We expect them to just kind of promote products randomly. There's not a through line story, maybe a vague relevance, like, oh, she does fitness, so she's promoting the fit tea. Like, that's the era I'm talking about. Then I was trying to explain how content creators are like these sensitive souls who pour their love and heart into their content, and they spend thousands and thousands of dollars on equipment and resources and education and software. And I was trying to show that look at how much these people are working uphill against your algorithm and your software to just make a better experience on your dingy app. Okay. Look at how much money they bring your app because we're the reasons why people actually want to be here, as opposed to the value that a typical kind of um out of touch influencer might have. Now, obviously, there's gray areas, it's not that black and white. But secondly, and more importantly, look at how much money they are spending. Do you not see any opportunity? All these people are trying to do is give value to an audience of people who want to hear from them. And all you are doing is putting ads in between our conversations and hiding us from each other. There's market proof that they would spend money the way that we spend money on our email lists and everything else. All we're trying to do is get in front of the people who want to hear from us,
Right.
and y'all haven't put two and two together. Y'all are still catering to the advertisement companies. You think that that is going to give you as much, I was trying to prove there's billions in helping our economic incentives, and it also has a more ethical grade and quality over the whole internet experience. Girl, they were not listening to me. So that was my presentation. I don't know what everyone's talking about now.
Now it's kind of flipped, honestly. So influencing, or the way that people are talking about it just online,
Yeah.
it's kind of like influencing is like the girls that are giving the other girls something to talk about. Like the influencer creates the trend, the content creator gonna do the trend, you know?
Okay,
And the
okay.
content creator may blow up. Like we're not, it's no shade to the content creator, you know.
Okay, okay,
And I
okay.
think even now with TikTok and certainly TikTok Shop, where you see the girls are like going full QVC. I'm like, these are some good ass ads.
Right, right.
But they may not have a following versus kind of like, you have your traditional influencer that people are like, whatever you're selling, I'm buying, because
Yeah,
love you, you
that
have
makes sense.
when
I feel like that's the Yeah, I feel like that's the 2.0
it
of
is.
the conversation before. And yes, like what I appreciate about that conversation is that it's taking the literal definitions of these words. Like I do agree that the people who hold the highest influence on the internet are often overlooked, like the people who actually start the trends. I have felt the brunt of that myself. Like I still feel like the influence of Boss Babe is way bigger than the company Boss Babe.
Oh
Like
yeah.
people think like I want credit for the company. I more just care about people understanding the influence and how that started. And I can't take credit for all the influence because you can't create a movement without people moving it,
Right.
So it's like,
Right.
what about us? Like where how are we exalted or highlighted in that story? No. And again, it's for me, it's not even about boss babe the term, it's about the millennial pink motivational
Right.
era of Instagram, and like, because the reason why I care so much is, again, I care about the economic and even like social and even probably political impact. Can you imagine if we got the data on how much, first of all, how many women were inspired to start businesses because of that movement? How many millions of dollars were generated? I mean, I would not be surprised if it's in the billions. How much employment started because of that?
Yep.
Like that's where I'm more like I'm like, yeah, cool. I came up with it. I trademarked the term, but it's so much bigger than
It
that as well. So
it is. I feel like it's like a psyche. And I feel like I was kind of raised on it because it gave me like somewhere to go. You know what I mean? Even
right.
I'm one of those people who like deletes nothing. My iCloud is full of things from 15 years ago. And it's like I had
Hello.
a
Hmm.
screenshot, of like, I was like,
Yeah.
look, screenshot. Like, I
Right.
had it all where it was like, these are the things, those were my inputs. Right. Like in the early days, I think I got on Instagram in 2012 because I was a senior in high school. And it's like those early inputs were these kind of like very, those quotes, those things. I never felt like somebody was trying to sell me something with it. You know what I mean? I was
Right.
like, no, this is like great stuff. This is
We
genuine.
were we were outside. We were on a mission. I remember it was such an era. It was such a moment. And yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to hear that. And that part I am proud of because the other thing that happened, which kind of was sad, was that the trend cycle ended. Like the commercial side of it happened and they took it and they ran with it and they exploited it and the pink bubble popped and now it's like, oh, pink. Everything went from pink to now it's chic and neutrals and black and white. And we don't really say boss babe anymore, girl boss. We're more like soft girls now, or we're this or we're that, whatever. Like now we're in a different trend cycle, which is fine. But I feel like the whole movement got dragged because of the people who kind of exploited it, as opposed to like the purity of all of us internet girls just like supporting each other and like really just like getting it out the mud.
Absolutely. And I feel like, and these could just be my feelings. They cannot be shared feelings, but I honestly feel like when I see a black woman starting something, even some of the biggest companies, there's always this kind of undertone of trying to create social mobility for others, trying to give back, this like very communal aspect in a very genuine way. And sometimes I think in business, maybe that's to our detriment, but although I can you ever say like being good-hearted and like, it's like to your detriment. But I do
Yeah.
feel like when I see black women, even like topicals, which I feel like is like the black girl company of the day to me, like they have this underlying tone of like, we're for the people and we're with the people, and here's our initiatives that we're gonna do, like to be with the people. Even Black
Yeah.
Women on a Mission, we ain't no $1 million brand, and I still give out money all year. Like we still do a scholarship, we do a Mother's Day giveaway,
Nice. Yeah.
you know, but we just find ways to say like, we wouldn't be here without you. We don't exist without you. So we want to give to you in
Right.
a genuine way. Like this is not about me selling you a t-shirt right now. Like I want to give you something that's valuable, So I
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
we always keep that undertone, which maybe in a lot of facets keeps us from that explosive growth.
Yeah, for sure. I think in my situation it was more just that I was so young
Mm,
and I was too easy. Like it was so easy to just grab the whole thing right out of my hand. I think it's still
mm,
easy to do that with the internet. It's
mm,
easy to just grab a whole kind of trend
mhm,
out of someone's hand. We see that all the time, and we definitely see it with Black women on social media, whether it be their choreography, their slang, whatever they're contributing. Like, it's so easy for that thing to just go crazy, and it's like, I don't even get to, you know.
yeah.
So, that's how I kind of feel about that movement. But we'll see. The story isn't over. I still think that we will revisit it and talk about it more.
So true. Much for being here. I really enjoyed this a lot. Before we go, I heard you talking about books today, so that's a question I want to ask is like, what are some book recommendations for the girls? And think specifically of the girls who are trying to stop overthinking it and start overdoing it.
I'm gonna I'm gonna give two recommendations. One is just Atomic Habits if you're really trying to get out of your head, because I was talking about how that's one of those books where you you almost can't finish the book because it's gonna inspire you to take action as you're reading. You're gonna be like, oh, I gotta put this down and go do what it's telling me to do. And it's just really great. It's clear. It's a modern day version of like how to successfully achieve habits. We have so many books like that, but this like is made for the millennial girls and all of us. And then the other one, do I want to recommend that one? About taking action, about taking action. The other book that I'm reading right now that is more action focused is called The Magic of Thinking Big, I believe. And The reason why I put it second is it's a little bit more dated and it's a little bit more male focused, and it's like how to be a successful, it's like written with this bias of like how to be a successful salesman. But if you can look past that and like have your own definition of success, there are a lot of provocative and stimulating ideas in there about just making you think bigger, making you ask for more, pushing yourself to be a better everything, and questions that you can ask yourself to actually achieve those bigger and better parts of yourself. So those are the two books I recommend.
Check out those book recommendations, ladies, if you're trying to stop overthinking it and start overdoing it. I just want to say one more big thank you to Alex Wolf for joining us on the podcast today. This has been super insightful and super helpful. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. And one last plug, if any of you are up and coming creatives or artists and you want to work with me, you can go to my Instagram at Alex Wolf. I am offering some creative coaching right now, and can help you kind of figure out what you want to do with your brand, what you want to do with your content strategy, and it can be a vibe.
All right, ladies. So hit her up.